The auction house's sterile white corridors echoed with the sound of Marcus Chen's boots as he made his way toward the service android section, his military-issued credit chip weighing heavy in his pocket. Fresh off a 6-month deployment defending the Outer Rim colonies, the human soldier had earned enough hazard pay to finally afford some help around his new homestead on Kepler Prime. What he hadn't expected was to find the most unusual auction lot he'd ever seen. Lot 247, the Velaxian auctioneer announced in his melodious triple-toned voice. One Zephyrian domestic unit, previously owned. Starting bid, 50 credits. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus paused in the doorway, his enhanced vision focusing on the small figure huddled in the center of the auction platform. She couldn't have been more than 5 feet tall, with pale blue-silver skin that seemed to shimmer under the harsh auction lights. Her hair, a cascade of deep violet that shifted to silver at the tips, hung in intricate braids that suggested some kind of cultural significance. But what caught his attention most were her eyes, large, luminous orbs of swirling gold and amber that seemed to hold depths of ancient knowledge. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way. But something about her posture spoke of defeat. Her head was bowed, delicate hands clasped in front of her, and she wore the simple gray tunic of an indentured servant. 50 credits, called out a Velaxian merchant, his insectoid clicking barely audible over the crowd noise. 60 countered. A wealthy-looking Centauri businessman, Marcus found himself studying the Zephyrian more closely. The file displayed on the auction screen told a story that made his jaw clench. Previous owners, 47. Reason for return, incompetent. Defective psychic readings, unsuitable for domestic service. The list went on. Each entry another rejection, another failure. 75 credits, the Velaxian merchant bid again, his compound eyes gleaming with what Marcus recognized as the look of someone expecting to get cheap labor. Something in the Zephyrian's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Her golden eyes lifted for just a moment, scanning the crowd with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. When her gaze briefly met his, he felt an odd sensation like the faintest whisper of something brushing against his consciousness. "Help. Me," the voice seemed to say, though her lips hadn't moved. Marcus blinked, shaking his head. Probably just his imagination after months in combat zones. But the feeling lingered. 100 credits, he called out before he could stop himself. The auctioneer's 3-toned voice carried a note of surprise. 100 from the human gentleman. Any advance on 100? The Velaxian merchant's mandibles clicked in. Annoyance, but he shook his head. The Centauri businessman had already moved on to examining other lots. Marcus realized with growing certainty that no one else saw what he saw when he looked at her. Going once, ... going twice. Sold to the human. For 100 credits? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As the transaction completed, and Marcus made his way to the processing area, he wondered what exactly he'd just gotten himself into. The Zephyrian in the file listed her designation as Subject 7429. There's no actual name, waited in a small holding cell, her posture unchanged. "You bought me," she said, when he approached, her voice carrying a musical quality that reminded him of wind. Chimes why? Good question. Marcus replied, showing his purchase documents to the processing droid. "I needed help with my homestead and you were... available." She tilted her head, studying him with those remarkable eyes. "The others who bought me said similar things. I disappointed them all." There was no self-pity in her voice, just a statement. A fact that somehow made it worse. Marcus felt his protective instincts, the same ones that had made him volunteer for the most dangerous assignments during the war stirred to life. "What's your name?" he asked as they walked toward the transport. "Area. I am Subject 7429 domestic unit classification." "No," Marcus interrupted gently. "Your name. What did your people call you before all this?" She stopped walking, her eyes widening in surprise. My name was Lirale. But master, you should know that I am Marcus," he said firmly. My name is Marcus, not Master. What are you, defective? She finished quietly. My psychic abilities are unreliable. I cannot perform standard Zephyrian domestic tasks. I break more than I repair. I see things that are not there, or fail to see things that are. Evaluation Council declared me unsuitable for Lirelay, Marcus said, and something in his tone made her look up at him again. When was the last time someone asked what you wanted to do instead of what you couldn't do? The question seemed to hit her like a physical blow. Her golden eyes shimmered with what might have been tears, though she blinked them away quickly. I don't understand the question, Marcus. The transport to his homestead on Kepler Prime was a quiet affair. Marcus found himself stealing glances at his unexpected purchase, trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what the files claimed. Lirelay sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, but her eyes were constantly moving, taking in details of the passing landscape with an intensity that suggested she was cataloging everything. When they passed a grove of Kepler Primes, native crystal trees, she suddenly tensed, her head turning to track something Marcus couldn't see. What is it? He asked. She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There will be a storm tonight. The trees, they sing warnings when the atmospheric pressure changes. Most people cannot hear it. Marcus checked his weather monitor. Clear skies predicted for the next 72 hours. Oh, the meteorological service says they are wrong, Lirelay said simply, then immediately looked stricken. Forgive me, Marcus. I should not have contradicted. No, it's fine, he assured her. Tell me what you hear. She was quiet for a long moment, her head tilted as if listening to something beyond normal hearing. The harmonic resonance is shifting. The crystal matrices in the trees detect electromagnetic fluctuations hours before your instruments can. Measure them. There will be lightning, heavy rain, and... She paused, her expression growing troubled. Something else. Something dangerous. 3 hours later, as they reached Marcus's homestead, a modest but comfortable dwelling he'd built, with his military savings, the first clouds were already gathering on the horizon. Storm warning issued for the Kepler Prime Eastern Settlement Zone announced his home's AI system. Severe weather expected within 2 hours. Possible tornado activity. Marcus stared at Lirelay, who was unpacking the few possessions that had come with her purchase, mostly basic clothing, and a small, intricately carved stone that she handled with reverence. How did you know? He asked. She looked up from her unpacking, confusion clear on her delicate features. Know what, Marcus? It's the storm? You predicted it hours before the weather service. She set down the carved stone carefully. Told. I am defective. My readings are unreliable. Perhaps it was merely coincidence, but Marcus was beginning to suspect there was nothing coincidental about Lirelay at all. As the storm struck with unprecedented fury, battering his homestead with winds that threatened to tear the roof off, he watched her move through his home with unconscious grace, her hands trailing along walls and surfaces as if she were reading something in them. The foundation will hold, she murmured, apparently unaware she was speaking aloud. But the northwest support beam will stress. It needs reinforcement. Marcus grabbed his tools and headed for the northwest corner of the house. Sure enough, the support beam was already showing signs of strain. 20 minutes of emergency bracing later, and the house rode out the storm intact. When the weather finally cleared, Marcus found Lirelay sitting by the window, staring out at the crystal trees that glittered in the post-storm light. Her carved stone was in her hands, and her lips were moving in what sounded like a prayer or chant in a language he didn't recognize. Lirelay, he said gently, sitting down across from her. How many of your previous owners knew you could predict weather? They did not care about predictions, she replied without looking away from the window. They wanted me to clean, to cook, to serve. When I would warn them of coming dangers, they said I was disrupting their schedules with nonsense. And when your predictions came true, they said it was coincidence, or that I had somehow caused the problems myself. Her voice remained level, but Marcus could hear the pain underneath. After the first dozen returns, I stopped trying to warn people. Marcus felt anger building in his chest, not at her, but at the short-sighted fools who had possessed something precious and thrown it away because they couldn't see its value. What's that? He asked. nodding toward the carved stone in her hands. Liralay's grip tightened protectively. It is. It's nothing of value. A trinket from my homeworld before the evacuation. I see it. She hesitated for a long moment, then slowly extended the stone toward him. The moment Marcus's fingers touched it, the world exploded into sensation. Images flashed through his mind. Vast cities of crystal and light. Beings with Liralay's ethereal beauty moving in perfect harmony with natural forces. And at the center of it all, figures in flowing robes standing before massive crystalline structures that pulsed with inner fire. Oracles his mind supplied somehow, as the last guardians of ancient wisdom. He jerked his hand back, gasping. Liralay was staring at him with wide eyes, her face pale with shock. "You saw," she whispered. "How did you see?" "Only those with the gift." What are you?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse from the intensity of the vision. "Don't tell me you're just a domestic servant. I've been around enough aliens to know when someone's hiding their true nature." Liralay looked down at the stone, her shoulders trembling slightly. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I am the last oracle of Zephyr Prime." The words hung in the air between them like a confession. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place, her uncanny predictions, the way she seemed to read the very environment around her, the depth of knowledge in her ancient eyes. "The last?" he asked gently. "My people, we were guardians of knowledge that stretched back 10,000 years. We could read the patterns of fate, see the threads that connect all things, guide civilizations away from destruction." Her voice broke slightly. "When the hegemony conquered our world, they declared our abilities unscientific superstition. They scattered my people as servants and slaves, forbidding us from practicing our arts. How long ago? 12 years? I was barely past my majority when they took me from the sacred grove. I have been ... merchandise ... ever since." Marcus studied her face, seeing past the defeated posture to the strength that must have sustained her through years of rejection and dismissal. "And your predictions, your abilities, they're not defective at all, are they?" "No," she admitted. "But the truth is more dangerous than being seen as defective. If the hegemony knew what I truly was, if they realized that an oracle still lived," she shuddered, "they would do far worse than sell me as a servant." "Why are you telling me this?" Liralay looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd seen her on the auction platform, there was hope in her golden eyes. "Because you are the first person in 12 years to ask what I am instead of what I am worth." Outside the crystal, trees chimed softly in the evening breeze, their song carrying notes that seemed to echo the momentous shift in both their destinies. Marcus realized that in buying what everyone else saw as worthless merchandise, he had acquired something infinitely more precious: the trust of someone who had every reason never to trust again. But as Liralay settled into the small guest room, he'd prepared for her. Neither of them noticed the small surveillance drone that had followed their transport from the auction house, or the encrypted message it transmitted to a heavily secured facility in the hegemony's core worlds. Subject: 7429 has made contact with a human. Monitoring protocols activated. Awaiting further instructions. The hunt for the last. Oracle was about to begin. Marcus woke before dawn to the sound of singing. Not ordinary singing, this was something that seemed to resonate through the very foundations of his homestead, a harmony that made his bones vibrate and his enhanced military implants hum in response. He slipped from his bed and padded quietly toward the source. Finding Liralay in his garden, her hands pressed against the trunk of the largest crystal tree on his property, she was glowing, not metaphorically. Actual bioluminescent patterns were flowing beneath her pale blue skin like living circuits, pulsing in rhythm with the tree's natural crystalline resonance. Her violet hair floated around her as if suspended in water, and her eyes had taken on an inner light that matched the tree's core. "Liralay," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned toward him, and Marcus sucked in a breath. This wasn't the defeated servant he'd brought home yesterday. This was something ancient and powerful, a being who looked like she could command the very elements. "The trees were calling," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "They remember my people. They remember when oracles walked among them on a dozen worlds. "What are you doing?" "Listening to the deep songs," she replied, though her expression suggested she was as surprised by her actions as he was. "I haven't dared to truly listen in 12 years. But here, with you, ... double quotes. She paused, the glow beneath her skin flickering. "I feel safe enough to remember what I am." Marcus approached slowly, watching the interplay of light between her and the tree. "What are the deep songs telling you?" Liralay's eyes widened, the golden orbs reflecting fear and wonder in equal measure. "Danger, great danger approaching this sector. The crystal networks across 3 systems are vibrating with warning. Something vast and hungry moves through. The void between stars. Hungry for what? Knowledge. Power. The last fragments of what the hegemony thought they had destroyed." She pulled her hands away from the tree, and the glow immediately began to fade. "Marcus, we may have made a terrible mistake. By allowing me to use my abilities, by acknowledging what I am, we have sent ripples through the cosmic web. Those who hunt my kind will have felt them." As if summoned by her words, Marcus's communication array chimed with an incoming priority message. The holographic display showed a face that made his blood run cold. Commander Vexthorn of the Hegemony. Intelligence Division, a Krillian whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was legendary even among human military circles. Citizen Chen. Thorn's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "You have recently acquired a Zephyrian servant. You require immediate access to examine this purchase for irregularities." Who had gone perfectly still, every trace of her ethereal power vanishing as she wrapped mundane humanity around herself like a cloak. "I'm sorry, Commander," Marcus replied, his military training keeping his voice level. "But I'm not subject to hegemony authority. This is Alliance space, and I'm a registered colonist with full property rights." Thorn's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Perhaps I was unclear. This is not a request. Our records indicate that the servant in question may be carrying contraband materials or prohibited technologies. We will arrive for inspection in 6 hours." The transmission ended, leaving Marcus and Liralay staring at each other across the garden. "They know," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. "The moment I touched the deep songs, the moment I allowed my true nature to surface, they felt it across the galaxy." "Then we run," Marcus said immediately. "I've got a ship, supplies, no." Liralay's voice carried a strange new authority. "Running will only confirm their suspicions. And there are things you need to understand about what we're facing." Led him back into the house, moving to the small altar she'd set up in her room. The carved stone sat in the center, but now Marcus could see that what he'd taken for decorative carvings were actually intricate script in a language that seemed to shift and change as he looked at it. "This is a memory stone," Liralay explained, lifting it with reverent hands. "One of the last repositories of true oracle knowledge. When my people were scattered, we hid these throughout the galaxy, waiting for the day when someone would arise who could read them safely. Why safely? What's dangerous about knowledge? Because oracle knowledge isn't just information. Living memory, experiences, emotions, and consciousness of every oracle who ever contributed to it. Most minds cannot handle direct contact without being overwhelmed." She hesitated, then looked at him with those ancient eyes. "But yesterday, when you touched the stone, you didn't just survive the contact. You understood what you saw." Marcus remembered the flash of images, the sense of vast cities and cosmic purpose. "What does that mean?" "It means that either you have latent psychic abilities that somehow escape testing, or..." She paused, studying his face with new intensity. "Or the universe has been guiding events far more carefully than either of us realized." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, his security system activated, displaying the approach of multiple hegemony vessels. But these weren't the standard inspection craft Thorn had implied. These were full military gunships, armed for serious combat. "That's not an inspection force," Marcus muttered. His military experience recognizing an assault formation when he saw one, Liralay closed her eyes. One hand pressed to the memory stone. When she opened them again, They blazed with inner fire. The hegemony has been searching for memory stones for over a decade, she said, her voice carrying new strength. They believe that if they can decode oracle knowledge, they can predict and control the future itself. But they don't understand that the knowledge chooses its vessel. Meaning that for 12 years, this stone has been waiting for someone it deemed worthy. And yesterday, it chose you. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You're saying this wasn't coincidence? That somehow I was meant to find you? I'm saying that the deeper patterns of fate are far more complex than even the hegemony suspects. Lirelei moved to the window, watching the approaching ships. That they're about to discover what happens when they threaten the universe's chosen instruments. The first gunship landed in Marcus's garden with military precision, its weapons systems already powered and tracking. Commander Thorne emerged with a full squad of hegemony soldiers, their armor gleaming with a technological superiority that had conquered half the galaxy. "Citizen Chen," Thorne called through external speakers, "you will surrender the Zephyrian servant immediately, along with any materials she has brought to your property." Marcus stepped outside. Lyra lay slightly behind him, her posture once again that of a defeated servant. But Marcus could feel something building around her, a tension in the air that made his enhanced senses prickle with warning. "I told you, Commander, this is Alliance space. You have no authority here." "Authority," Thorne laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "I have 3 gunships and enough firepower to reduce this entire homestead to ash, is all the authority I require. And I have something you've been hunting for 12 years, Lirelei said quietly, stepping forward with the memory stone in her hands. Thorne's entire demeanor changed instantly. Impossible. "The memory stones were destroyed when we purged Zephyr Prime." "You destroyed decoys and fragments," Lirelei replied, her voice gaining power with each word. "The true stones were hidden where only the worthy could find them. And now, Commander, you face a choice. The only choice here is whether you surrender voluntarily or whether I take what I came for from your corpses." Lirelei smiled, and Marcus felt the temperature around them drop 10 degrees. "You can try," she said, pressing the memory stone against her chest. "But you should know that there's a reason the hegemony has never successfully captured a memory stone intact." The stone began to glow, its light intensifying until it seemed to burn with the heart of a star. Lirelei's bioluminescent patterns flared to life again. But this time, they weren't gentle. They were blazing conduits of power that made the very air around her shimmer with heat. "Impossible," Thorne breathed. "The neural suppressors should prevent any Zephyrian from accessing their abilities." "The suppressors work on normal Zephyrians," Lirelei replied, rising into the air as energy crackled around her. "But I am the last oracle, and the memory stone has been waiting 12 years to awaken fully." Marcus watched in awe as the transformation continued. This wasn't just Lirelei accessing her natural abilities. This was something far greater. The memory stone was sharing its accumulated power, temporarily making her a conduit for the combined knowledge and strength of every oracle who had ever lived. "Fire," Thorne commanded. The hegemony weapons opened up, plasma bolts and particle beams converging on Lirelei's position. But the energy simply ... stopped. Hanging in the air around her like frozen lightning, held motionless by forces that made hegemony technology look primitive. "Never understood," Lirelei said, her voice now carrying the harmonic resonance of cosmic forces. "Oracle power doesn't come from genetics or technology. It comes from harmony with the fundamental forces that bind the universe together." She gestured, and the frozen weapon's fire reversed direction, sending the hegemony soldiers scrambling for cover as their own attacks pursued them.
But, Marcus could see the strain this was putting on her.
The memory stone was burning brighter than ever, but cracks of exhaustion were showing around her eyes. This level of power wasn't meant to be sustained by a single being. "Lirelei," he called, "you're burning yourself out." "The knowledge must be preserved," she replied, though her voice was growing hoarse. "If they capture the memory stone, they'll twist everything my people died to protect." Marcus made a decision that surprised even him. He stepped forward, directly into the maelstrom of energy surrounding her, and reached for the memory stone. Then don't carry it alone, he said, his hands closing over hers on the burning crystal. The universe exploded. Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond his physical form, touching vast networks of knowledge and memory that spanned millennia. But instead of being overwhelmed, he found himself anchored by Liralay's presence beside him in the cosmic flow. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone, through their shared consciousness. Marcus understood what the hegemony truly feared. It wasn't just oracle abilities or ancient knowledge, it was the proof that there were forces in the universe greater than technology and conquest. The oracles represented the possibility that wisdom and harmony could triumph over brute force. Together, Liralay's voice reached him through their mental link. Show them what they've really awakened. Marcus felt power flow through him. Not the chaotic force of destruction, but something far more subtle and powerful. The ability to see and manipulate. The connecting threads that bound all things together. Through his enhanced military implants, he suddenly understood how to interface directly with the hegemony's technology. The gunships. Weapons powered down without warning. Their navigation systems began displaying nonsensical readings. Emergency protocols activated as their artificial intelligences reported system-wide malfunctions that couldn't possibly exist. Impossible, Thorne snarled, but Marcus could hear uncertainty creeping into his voice. Our systems are hardened against all known forms of psychic interference. Against known forms, Marcus agreed, his voice carrying new harmonics that resonated with Liralay's oracle power. But you never encountered a human-oracle bond before. The truth was becoming clear to Marcus through their shared connection. The universe had been preparing for this moment, slowly guiding events toward the point where human adaptability and determination could merge with oracle wisdom and power. What the hegemony saw as random acquisition of a defective servant was actually the culmination of cosmic forces that had been building for decades. Commander, one of Thorne's subordinates, called urgently.
Our systems are compromised.
The natives appear to have developed some form of technological possession ability. Then we destroy them before they can spread whatever contamination they're carrying, Thorne decided. Manual weapon systems, maximum firepower. But as the hegemony soldiers raised their backup weapons, every crystal tree in the area began to sing. The harmonic resonance built to a crescendo that made the ground itself vibrate. And Marcus realized that Liralay's awakening had activated something far greater than personal power. She had awakened. The planet's own consciousness. Kepler Prime's crystal forests were more than decorative. They were a vast organic network, a planetary nervous system that had been dormant until touched by true oracle power. Now, that network was responding to the threat against its newest guardians. The ground beneath the hegemony forces began to shift as crystalline structures erupted from the soil, not attacking but simply containing. The soldiers found themselves trapped in cages of living crystal that adapted to counter every attempt at escape. This ends now, Thorne declared, pulling out a personal disruptor weapon. If I can't have the stone intact, I'll ensure no one else can either. He aimed the weapon directly at the blazing memory stone still held between Marcus and Liralay's joined hands. But as his finger tightened on the trigger, Marcus felt something unexpected flow through their bond. Not just Liralay's power, but something uniquely human, stubborn, unreasonable. Absolute refusal to give up. The disruptor fired. Its energy beam designed to shatter molecular bonds and reduce matter to component atoms. But Marcus and Liralay, working together through their impossible bond, simply redirected it. The destructive energy flowed around them like water around a stone, dissipating harmlessly into the planetary crystal network. The bond, Liralay whispered, wonder and exhaustion warring in her voice. It's not just sharing power, it's creating something entirely new. Marcus nodded, understanding flowing between them without words. They weren't just human and oracle anymore. They were a bridge between two completely different ways of understanding the universe. And that bridge was stronger than anything the hegemony had ever encountered. Commander Thorne, trapped in his own crystal cage, could only watch as his carefully planned operation crumbled around him. But as Marcus and Liralay finally released, the memory stone, allowing its power to settle into a sustainable harmony with the planetary network. Both of them knew this was only the beginning. The hegemony would not give up easily. And across the galaxy, other forces were already taking notice of the unprecedented power they had just displayed. The hunt for the last Oracle was about to become something far more dangerous, a war for the future of knowledge itself. The crystalline Cage's held commander. Thorn and his forces, for exactly 18 hours before the rescue fleet arrived, made 3 hegemony dreadnoughts that dropped out of hyperspace with weapons already charging. Marcus stood on his porch. Leary lay beside him, watching death descend from the stars. "They're not here to negotiate this time," he observed, his enhanced vision tracking the massive ship's weapon arrays. "No," Leary agreed, her hand unconsciously moving to where the memory stone now rested against her heart, its power integrated into her very being. "Neither are we the same people who faced Thorn yesterday." Through their bond, Marcus felt her consciousness expanding, touching something vast and ancient that had been sleeping in the space between stars. The awakening of Kepler Prime's crystal network had sent ripples through dimensions the hegemony didn't even know existed, and now those ripples were returning as something far more significant. "Leary," he said softly, "what exactly did we wake up?" Before she could answer, space around the hegemony fleet began to shimmer. Ships materialized from what appeared to be empty void vessels of impossible beauty crafted from living crystal and starlight. Their design was unlike anything in the known galaxy, organic curves that seemed to flow like frozen music. "The Keepers," Leary whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "The first civilization to achieve true harmony between consciousness and cosmos. They've been waiting in the deep void for 12,000 years." The lead keeper vessel opened a communication channel that bypassed technology entirely. Speaking directly to the minds of everyone within the system, "We greet the new bridge between flesh and spirit." The prophecies spoke of this moment. Marcus felt the alien presence in his mind, vast, ancient, but surprisingly gentle. Through his bond with Leary, he could understand their complex harmonic language as they continued. "The violent ones have pursued shadows while the true light was being kindled. This cannot be permitted to continue." Admiral Korath, commanding the hegemony fleet, responded with typical military directness. "Unknown vessels, you're interfering with a lawful hegemony operation. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." The reply came not in words but in demonstration. One of the hegemony dreadnoughts simply ... stopped, not destroyed. Not disabled, every system remained functional. But the ship became perfectly motionless in space, held by forces that made gravity look weak. "Violence against the bridge builders will not be tolerated," the Keepers announced. "Withdraw or join your predecessor in contemplative stillness." Marcus felt a surge of protective instinct through his bond with Leary, but she placed a calming hand on his arm. "They won't destroy the hegemony ships," she said. "The Keepers believe all consciousness is sacred, even consciousness twisted by aggression and fear. Then how do we stop them from coming back with bigger fleets?" Leary's eyes took on the golden glow that meant she was accessing Oracle knowledge. "We don't stop them. We change the rules entirely." She stepped forward, her voice carrying across space itself without need for technology. "Admiral Korath, you seek the power of the oracles. I offer you a demonstration of what that power truly means." The memory stone's light flared, and Marcus felt their bond expand beyond anything they'd experienced before. But this time, instead of drawing power inward, they were broadcasting it outward, sharing the fundamental oracle truth with every conscious being in the system. For a brief, shining moment, the hegemony soldiers felt what it was like to be truly connected. They experienced the universe as oracles did, a vast web of interconnected consciousness where every being mattered, where cooperation created exponentially more value than conquest, where wisdom was measured not by what you could take but by what you could nurture and protect. The effect was immediate and devastating to hegemony doctrine. Across their fleet, soldiers began questioning orders. Officers reconsidered their priorities. Admiral Korath himself found his worldview crashing down around him as he experienced the brutal futility of his life's work. What have you done to my crews? He demanded, though his voice lacked its former authority. I've shown them the truth, Lirelei replied. The same truth the hegemony has spent centuries trying to suppress, that there are better ways to live than conquest and domination. Marcus felt the change rippling outward through the hegemony personnel, not mind control, but revelation.
That
Oracle gift didn't force beliefs, it simply allowed beings to see past the lies and conditioning that kept them trapped in cycles of violence. But even as the immediate crisis passed, Marcus's military training was cataloging new threats. The hegemony leadership won't let this stand, he warned. They'll adapt, find ways to counter Oracle influence, which is why the time for hiding is over, the keeper vessels announced. The bridge has been built. Now all who carry the light must emerge from shadow. Space around them began filling with more ships, not military vessels, but something far more significant. Refugee transports, hidden colonies, scattered survivors of a dozen races the hegemony had thought extinct. The awakening of the human-oracle bond had sent a signal across the galaxy. The age of suppression was ending. My people, Lirelei breathed, watching as distinctly Zephyrian vessels materialized from hyperspace. But how? The hegemony said they had all been scattered or killed. The hegemony believes what it chooses to believe, replied one of the arriving ship captains, his voice carrying the melodic tones of Lirelei's homeworld. Oracle Lirelei, you have done what we thought impossibly. You have awakened the deep songs in a being not of our blood. Marcus found himself the center of attention from dozens of alien species, all studying him with expressions of wonder and curiosity. Through his bond with Lirelei, he could sense their thoughts, amazement that a human could survive direct contact with oracle power. Speculation about what this meant for the future, and underneath it all, hope for the first time in generations. I don't understand, he said. Why is everyone acting like I'm some kind of chosen one? I just bought a servant at an auction because she looked like she needed help. And that, replied the Keeper spokesperson, is precisely why the cosmos chose you. Power without compassion is tyranny. Knowledge without wisdom is destruction. A heart that sees value where others see worthlessness. That is the foundation upon which true civilization can be built. Lirelei turned to face him, her golden eyes bright with tears and laughter. Don't you see, Marcus? For 12 years, I was passed from owner to owner, all of them looking for ways to profit from my abilities. But you were the first to ask what I wanted, what I needed. That simple act of recognition created a resonance the universe had been waiting for. The truth was both humbling and terrifying. Marcus realized that his decision to purchase Lirelei hadn't been random. It had been the culmination of cosmic forces that had been building for millennia. The universe itself had been arranging events to bring them together. So what happens now? He asked, looking around at the growing fleet of formerly hidden civilizations. Now, the Keepers announced, we rebuild what was torn down, the hegemonies. Power was built on the suppression of knowledge and the isolation of species from one another. But you have proven that different forms of consciousness can not only coexist, but can create something greater than either could achieve alone. Admiral Korath, still held motionless in his command ship, made one last attempt at defiance. You think this changes anything? The hegemony will send larger fleets, deadlier weapons. We will not be defeated by parlor tricks and philosophy. Marcus felt anger rise through his bond with Lirelei, but her response surprised him. Instead of retaliation, she projected pure compassion toward the trapped admiral. You're right that this doesn't end the conflict, she admitted, but it changes the nature of the war. Before today, you were fighting to suppress a memory, to kill an idea. But ideas that are truly alive cannot be destroyed. They can only grow stronger when opposed. She gestured toward the assembled fleet of liberated civilizations. You're no longer facing scattered refugees and broken survivors. You're facing the awakened galaxy itself, united by the proof that cooperation creates power beyond your comprehension. Marcus watched as the revelation sank in across the hegemony forces. They weren't just dealing with a single oracle anymore. They were facing the resurgence of every civilization they had thought conquered, every species they had believed broken, all of them now linked by the example of what human-oracle cooperation could achieve. The bridge builders will need protection while their bond strengthens, the keepers observed. The hegemony will attempt to strike at them before their influence can spread further. Then we don't give them the chance, Marcus decided, his tactical mind already working through possibilities. Lirelei, can our bond reach other humans? Other potential bridge builders. Her eyes widened as she understood what he was suggesting. You want to create more human oracle partnerships? I want to create a network, Marcus corrected. Humans have always been good at adaptation and forming unlikely alliances. If we can find others who are compatible with oracle consciousness, the multiplication effect, the keepers agreed. Each new bridge will strengthen all the others. Web of connection will become too vast for any force to suppress. Lirelei pressed closer to Marcus, their bond singing with shared purpose. It will be dangerous. The hegemony will do everything in their power to prevent other partnerships from forming. Then we'd better work fast, Marcus grinned, feeling the familiar thrill of a mission that mattered. How do we find compatible humans? The same way the universe found you, Lirelei replied, her consciousness already reaching out through the cosmic web. We look for those who see value where others see worthlessness, who ask what others need instead of what they can provide, who choose compassion over conquest. As their combined awareness expanded, Marcus felt other sparks of possibility scattered across human space, individuals whose hearts and minds were already aligned with oracle principles, even if they didn't know it yet. Military personnel disgusted by unnecessary violence, scientists frustrated by research restrictions, colonists trying to build better communities in the face of hegemony oppression. There Lirelei whispered, her consciousness touching dozens of potential points of light. So many who were ready if only they knew what was possible. Keeper vessels began moving into formation around them, not as guards but as guides. We will help you reach the others, they announced. The Great Awakening begins now. Marcus looked around at the assembled fleet representatives of civilizations that had survived in hiding for centuries, all united by the hope that things could be different. Through his bond with Lirelei, he felt the weight of responsibility settling on both their shoulders. They weren't just partners anymore. They were the first chapter in a new story. The proof that the universe's greatest powers came not from conquest, but from connection. Ready for this? He asked Lirelei, taking her hand as their ship prepared to jump to the first potential bridge builder. Her smile was radiant with possibility. I've been ready for 12 years. Let's show the galaxy what happens when hope has something to believe in. As they entered hyperspace, surrounded by the liberated fleets of a dozen civilizations, Marcus realized that what had started as a simple act of compassion at a servant auction had become something cosmic in scope. The hegemony had spent centuries trying to suppress the truth that all consciousness was connected. Now that truth was about to spread across the galaxy, one bridge at a time, until no force in the universe could tear it down again. The age of the Oracle-Human Alliance had begun, and the future would never be the same. Final epilogue, 6 months later. Marcus stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of New Harmony Station, watching representatives from 47 species debate the terms of their new alliance. Beside him, Lirelei monitored the quantum resonance network that now connected over 200 human oracle partnerships across the galaxy. The hegemony still existed, but its power was broken. Cannot conquer people who refuse to be divided. Cannot suppress knowledge that flows freely between minds. Cannot rule through fear when hope has proven itself stronger. Any regrets? Lirelei asked, her hand finding his as another successful bridge formation lit up on their network display. Marcus smiled, remembering the day he'd bought what everyone else saw as worthless merchandise and found instead the key to the galaxy's future. Only that it took me so long to find you. Their bond sang with shared laughter somewhere across the stars. Another human looked past surface appearances to see the value in what others had discarded, and the web of connection grew stronger. Still, the end up next. You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.